Hey there folks, Rel here. This is your weekly update for Sunday, March 9th, 2014. As always, the links to everything we talk about will be listed in the video description below, as well as some links to things that we won't end up talking about. On Thursday, we released a revamped loadout guide for one of my favorite setups in all of PlanetSide 2. I've loved it forever. It's something that I personally like to call the Leviathan Heavy Assault. It's a loadout geared toward causing as much destruction as humanly possible to groups of infantry as well as max units and vehicles, and you do sacrifice a lot of survivability to gain that sort of power. It's a loadout geared more toward players who know what they're doing and can move well and can shoot well, and it is better suited to a lone wolf style of play than a coordinated effort. On Wednesday, I skipped out on the live stream to finish up some things and also to discuss player engagement and progression with Drank the Kool-Aid and STL Youngblood on another episode of the Duality series. And for those who don't know, the Duality series is produced by Youngblood and Kool-Aid, where they discuss the going-ons in-game, as well as some of the broader state of things and how we can improve upon them. I believe they intend to have another guest commentator being part of the conversation on each episode, and I know that Kamikaze78 was on the last one. It's just a good series, it has a lot of potential, and if you don't know STL Youngblood or the Kool-Aid line, they are both commentators that have been extremely helpful to the PlanetSide 2 community and are very knowledgeable about the game, especially from the NC side of things. They're also really good guys who could use your support, so do go check out their channels if you aren't already subscribed. On Saturday, we released the Recon device versus Motion Spotter review and comparison, and during these experiments I found out a few interesting quirks about the two devices and even dropped a whole too long didn't watch in the video description. I've also built upon that list using the corrections and tips that you all have listed in the comments section in the video. So if you play an infiltrator and are on the fence about which device you should focus on ranking up, or even if you're a non-infiltrator who just wants to know what they're up against or know how to avoid these sorts of detection methods, then the video might be able to offer some insight. And that's all that's happened for the week so far, but there are a handful of new things that I would like to talk about as well. The first is just some whining that I have to do about my Nvidia card not working lately. Specifically for PlanetSide 2, I can stay in a game for maybe like 10 minutes, and then the card will end up crashing, it'll reboot, and then it'll eventually crash the game. And this is even if I'm not running Shadowplay as far as I can tell. Now I've tried rolling back the drivers twice. I've uninstalled the driver and reinstalled a previous version, and I've also, of course, tried updating my drivers as well as lowering some of the in-game settings. I've tried a whole lot of different things and nothing has worked so far, so needless to say, this makes footage gathering very, very difficult for me right now. I don't know how this is going to affect my video production. I do have a lot of footage saved up of just random sort of things, but I did want to outline my excuse up front if that does happen to be the case. Beyond that, Titanfall drops on March 11th, and I'm extremely looking forward to that game. It was a lot of fun during beta, and it's less coordinated than PlanetSide 2, so I don't have to rely on others as often in order to wreck shop, and that's what I like to do. So having a game that's only 6 versus 6 as of right now really lets me cut loose, which is something that I feel I rarely get to do in PlanetSide 2 unless I find myself in a good situation to take advantage of. I know that I said that I would be getting some Titanfall footage up on the casual channel, and that still might happen before the game is released, but either way, there will be some limited Titanfall content coming to the channel alongside the normal PlanetSide 2 content. And speaking of which, as far as PlanetSide 2 goes, if you haven't taken a look at the suggested balance changes coming soon, it's worth checking out. There's a link in the video description. The roadmap title actually has it listed as April, but in the post it says March, so I don't know which is which, but either way, I'm not going to say more about it than that. I'm just going to let you draw your own conclusions. But in more detrimental news, weapon reviews are going to be a lot more difficult to pull off now, at least difficult to go in depth as I usually do. And the reason for that is, at least from what I understand, the API no longer sends weapon data and is instead sent by the server, so in order for anyone to extract that weapon data, they'd have to have hooks into the server, which could get them banned. The technicalities of it really go right over my head, but this is what I understand the current situation to be. But regardless of how you look at it, the place where I normally go to find weapon specifics is either outdated or not being updated at all. Namely, that'd be the spreadsheet that Cheesecrackers put together, as well as Dawsonfall's stats site, which 50 Shades of Purple has created. And the reason why this matters is that reviews will become more subjective, and unless I sit there and test and test and test, just in the VR room, and then I take measurements as to their recoil values and then break down the video, take screenshots and compare them in Photoshop. It's annoying. Basically, doing that would not be worth the time that it would take for me to produce a video. I feel like I can still offer some legitimate reviews that go more in depth than other commentators are going to be able to, and I'm going to do this by basically just setting a lot of things up. I want to separate weapon accuracy and kill potential into tiers, which I can use to easily describe the kind of effect you'll have on targets at different ranges, but even that is it's really subjective, and it does require a lot of groundwork to be done. This is something that I had discussed with the Patreon members, and they had a lot of good feedback, but what it comes down to is that I want to take a subjective feeling and translate it into something that is more objective and that I can relate to an individual's personal aim and skill. So instead of saying things like, this weapon feels really, really good, it makes my tummy all warm, I do really, really well with it, I want to say something like, this weapon has a tier 1 headshot potential up to 30 meters, meaning that if you are skilled at headshots, this weapon is likely going to be more effective for you than X, Y, or Z alternatives. But, like I said, that's just a lot of groundwork for me to do. It's just an idea right now. It doesn't really affect you all, outside of me just not being able to release an objective weapon review like I usually do. And that's at least until these problems are fixed by SOE, or if they decide to release some more detailed stats. Now, I am still going to try to put out reviews before I have all of this sorted, but I'm not really a fan of doing things this way. The last thing that I want to talk about is a potential opportunity that I and others have received, and I'm not sure how much I can or should say about it just yet, since things are still in the works, but what I want to ask is, if I was given a show, like a legitimate time slot on the official PlanetSide 2 Twitch.tv channel, what kind of content would you like to see? Now, the show would need to be themed. It needs to be something that I can pitch. It can't solely be gameplay, and it would be like an hour-long block of time. And what I was thinking are things along the lines of, maybe answering questions for beginners, or going into certain game mechanics and strategies live and in-depth, or offering up ways that beginners can become better players by offering tips and maybe running a squad, or maybe even something like just being an impromptu feedback forum for the developers. So those are just ideas, but I want you to be very specific when you try to answer this question. If I had an hour-long show on Twitch.tv, what would you like to see? As always, any feedback that you can offer is greatly, greatly appreciated, and I want to thank you all again for supporting the channel. I'm doing the best I can with what I have to work with right now, and I hope that I can keep providing you all with some interesting, helpful, and entertaining content. Thanks very much, folks. We're all signing off.